On our broadcast tonight, government's chief negotiator on BTC speaks on misconceptions of the deal. You'll see it only here on ZNS News.
Coming up in the Bahamas tonight, the unions up at Central Bank take their fight to parliamentarians. We've got that story coming up.
Coming up in the Bahamas tonight, the first National Environmental Conclave takes place, and the Minister of the Environment outlines his plans for 2014.
Coming up in the Bahamas tonight, we'll tell you why the vote campaign still sees last year's gaming referendum as a victory.
And Alonzo Mourning heats up and boils over with love for the Bahamas. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
The controversy over the BT seal hasn't gone away, even after government delivered on an election promise. Good evening, I'm Andrew Knowles.
And I'm Opal Roach. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, government's chief negotiator for the deal told ZNS News that he thinks it's important to eliminate misconceptions as he shared some inside information about what happened around the negotiating table. Wilson said the first hurdle both sides had to get over was the quality of service issue that many BTC customers say started the minute the company was sold to Cable and Wireless.
What happened was, during the course of the negotiations, the former Prime Minister did things which I hope that at some point he will explain to the Bahamian people why he did it. Because on the surface it's not logical. It was like he reached a point where there was like it comes across to me as like it was spiteful. I am gonna, words to the effect, I'm gonna tie this up so much that no one could touch it. Well, why should you tie up something in a way that your own people can't benefit in the future from it? I mean, see, the point I make, it's not logical to me why that statement or why that approach was in the national interest of the Bahamas. So, for example, why would the government at that point have agreed to put in the agreement that if this thing was in any way changed, the country had to pay $100 million in the first year? $80 million in this and $40 million in the third year. I mean, why was that in the interest of the country? Why would he have not resisted that on the grounds that, look, we're a democracy? And if a future prime minister has a different view on this matter and he reflects the will of the people through a free and fair election, well, then that's the risk you pay. And the interesting thing about it is, why I say that was particularly, I don't understand it, is that Cable and Wireless is used to that. We saw the records when we came over, we went and we saw the records where Cable and Wireless says, we know these things happen. They take political risk. Why would the government of the Bahamas protect Cable and Wireless against the political risk of doing business in the Bahamas? I don't understand that. So that comment about I tie it up so that whatever it is, it just comes across to me like it was spite against your own people.
Now, Wilson also shared the committee's astonishment over the terms of the original deal that was negotiated under the previous administration. Stopping short of calling it a giveaway, the committee chairman had this to say about the intentions of the former prime minister.
The British High Commissioner came to see me, essentially sort of saying, listen, this is a British company and let's make sure we treat them right. And they were advancing Cable and Wireless's interests. Well, at that point, I don't think I had yet, we, I want to make that point. We, the committee, had yet convinced Cable and Wireless just how serious this quality issue was. I was able to take advantage of the fact that a former Governor General named Dame Ivy had written a letter to the press talking about quality of service. So I used that, I gave it to the British High Commissioner. I says, look at this, read it, look at the author. This is a former representative of Her Majesty the Queen. This is no rabble-rouser, troublemaker. This is the epitome of what the Commonwealth is all about. I think that was significant because I believe that that helped, I think, I don't know it for a fact, but I think that helped to go back to cable and wireless and people in the British government, that maybe the people in the Bahamas had a point.
In other news tonight, issues impacting the environment addressed today during the first national conclave. The participants are looking at the importance of protecting the environment, and at the end of the day, they will send their recommendations to policymakers. Janelle Noel Ferguson tells us that the Environment Minister opened the event and outlined plans for the crucial sector.
The Bahamas has long relied on the environment for its economic prosperity, and Minister of the Environment Ken Dorset is extending the government's reach to ensure its preservation.
The beauty and diversity which the Bahamian environment holds should be protected zealously for and by the Bahamian people.
Minister Dorset informed attendees at the first environmental conclave Wednesday that in addition to strides taken last year that include the start of an energy reform, increased garbage collection, and legislative changes, more plans are on tap for 2014.
We intend to debate very soon the Public Parks and Public Beaches Bill, which will establish the Public Parks and Public Beaches Authority, a body which will be charged with identification, regulation, maintenance, development, and conservation of our public parks and public beaches. This is in line with the government's commitment to provide green spaces for Bahamians throughout the archipelagic chain.
And that's just the start of it.
In the next budget year, the derelict vehicle site on Marshall Road will be moved to a site adjacent to the New Providence landfill, and we begin to address the deplorable state of our landfills and dump sites in the Family Islands.
The Environment Minister indicated that there are also plans to develop the nation's first green subdivision.
This proposed community would feature solar power and or energy efficient LED residential and street lights, solar water heaters, and PV solar grid tie systems and energy efficient construction methods. I envision that this development would become the model for all future public and private sector housing projects.
The three-day conclave ends on Friday, where participants will offer recommendations on various pieces of environmental legislation and suggestions for the way forward. Janelle Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Now, the Housing and Environment Minister also addressed concerns about several government homes in Pride estates, which have reportedly been vandalized and to a greater extent used as a public restroom. Now, this has created a major environmental concern with area residents, and many are questioning why those homes have not been occupied. Minister Dorset admits that the process to get persons into those homes is a lengthy one.
Some of these homes have been assigned and reassigned several times, and it really speaks to the pre-qualification and qualification process. There are a lot of people who, when they go out to get their medicals, the medicals don't come back with the necessary, approvals for them to proceed. And so it's just a part of the application process. Lawyers sometimes take longer than they need to in terms of producing the legal opinions, and so that's why I've also asked BMC to institute the same industry practices of the private sector. You should be able to turn over the legal work in 2 weeks. That's what the private sector is mandated to do, but sadly in the past we've allowed them to take 3 to 4 months to produce a legal opinion. So it's just trying to bring in the private sector nuances into how we do business to bring about the efficiencies.
Now, we understand that nearby shantytown residents have been blamed for defacing the government homes. And while the crackdown on those villages continue, Dorset says no matter who's to blame, government has to clean them up.
I don't want to speculate, but from some of the anecdotal information that we have received, we believe that it is. And I think that as the DEHS special unit has been in that area recently and taking action to remove those areas, it is highly likely that this is in response to those efforts. And so we intend to address both, that is the neighboring shanty town, as well as moving occupants into the homes.
A victory service of prayer and praise was held last night at Rawson Square to celebrate 1 year since the Vote No campaign won at the polls. Jimenita Swain was there.
It was a night of prayer and praise for the No Vote campaign, who marked the 1-year anniversary of last year's gaming referendum. Around 60 supporters turned out to celebrate the event. Senior pastor at Grace Community Church, Lyle Bethel, told reporters that if government does not enforce the results of last year's referendum, the public may not support the upcoming constitutional referendum.
If the Prime Minister doesn't respect this referendum, I think every politician needs to give up on referendums. Because what you've just told the people, it doesn't matter. Your opinion, you didn't come up with the right answer I wanted, and therefore your opinion's not important. And then you're going to come back in June with another referendum? Who are you kidding? And so my strong encouragement is respect the wishes of the people. Respect it, and you win. Everybody wins. That's an instance where everybody wins.
Bethel said the anniversary was bittersweet despite the win and web shops remain open. Another proponent of the Vote No campaign, Pastor Mario Moxie, suggested that the tolerance for crime has allowed web shops to flourish.
Slide defeat of the expansion of criminality in this country last year should be a wake-up call to all of us, that we who stand for moral values possess not only a voice, but we represent a force that cannot be ignored when determining the course of direction in nation building.
With the formal services completed, the pastors, along with the attendees, signed a billboard erected that read, "Referendum Victory, January 28, 2013. To God be the glory, great things He has done." Now, after the 2013 referendum, Prime Minister Perry Christie ordered the immediate shutdown of web shops. However, a Supreme Court injunction filed by the attorneys for the web shops prevented the closure of those companies. The matter remains in litigation. But for Erica Moxie, she said gambling takes a heavy toll on families.
I deal with the other side of it. I deal with the women that come in for counseling whose husbands are spending all their money. As soon as they get paid, they're going to the numbers houses. They're spending every cent that they have, and then they're at wit's ends. You know what I mean? They don't want to leave their relationship and their marriage, their vows that they gave to God, but they have husbands now that are investing everything in chance.
Supporters of the Vote No campaign say they just want the will of the people to be respected and web shops closed. Jimenita Swain, ZNS Network News.
The central bank unions now have the support of the National Congress of Trade Unions in their pension fight. The unions representing management and line staff took their protest a step further today, all in hopes of getting government intervention. Well, Candino Knowles tells us that they protested outside of the annual parliamentary church service in downtown Nassau.
Central Bank Managers Union President Talbot Colley has stood in solidarity with Union of Central Bankers Representative Melanie Munnings from the start. But the union leaders are hoping to avoid taking any action that could cripple day-to-day operations.
I think there was a clear demonstration of that about 2 weeks ago, where persons would have come to the Exchange Control Department and were unable to get services. There are approvals, even though there are certain approvals that have been delegated to the commercial banks. There are certain approvals that are required, that you are required to come to the central bank and receive.
The union's attorney, Dennis Williams, says the fact that central bank workers are actually contributing to their pensions, unlike many other public sector workers, makes swallowing this pill a whole lot more difficult.
And I've advised the union members that they must stick to their guns and they must be more resolved now than ever to do whatever they have to do within reason and within the law.
Because this is a national issue. If they affect one pension plan and get away with it, they will try to duplicate that in the various government agencies, and the private sector will follow suit.
And it's that possible precedent that brought National Congress of Trade Union President John Pinder out of the woodwork in support of his members up at Central Bank. The NCTU, Central Bank Management, and line staff protested outside the annual parliamentary service at Trinity Methodist Church this morning in hopes of getting government's attention, since it appears that Central Bank won't budge on its position to make cuts to the existing pension plan.
Cost of living does not decrease because one retires. It is a 33-plus-year-old benefit that all persons who work for the central bank has been enjoying, and those who has retired is now enjoying it.
We've been to the Department of Labor. Conciliation fell through. The bank is just not willing to step back from its position and relook at what's what it proposes to do.
Also concerned about the kind of message this action is sending to the wider corporate community is Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson.
That's definitely a concern for us, because once you do it to one entity, then the precedents would have been set, and it'll be so easy for you to do it to someone else or to another group of employees. So I believe that is something that all of the trade union leaders need to keep a close eye on.
Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Philip Davis, said he was not familiar with the ongoing dispute.
One must recognize that the central bank is an autonomous institution with their own sets of terms and conditions of services, and I suspect retirement benefits. Whether that aligns with the public service is not a question. So for me to respond to that without knowing all the details would be premature.
Now, the unions have been promising strike action for about 2 weeks now, but nothing has materialized just yet. And while the protest is over, the unions are saying they're hoping that they can resolve this matter amicably before taking any further action. Kendino Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Thanks, Candino. In other union news, the teachers union still has issues with the fingerprinting of expat teachers, and today the group filed a trade dispute. This as education officials say they're tightening the vetting process by requiring those foreign teachers to be fingerprinted to further prevent any sex abuse scandals in the public school system. President Belinda Wilson claims the practice was illegal and says the union is moving forward with its plans to have it discontinued.
In light of the breach of the Employment Act, Section 67, which states that no employer shall require, as a provision for employment or continuous employment, a set of fingerprints or a lie detector test. All we're saying to the government is the Employment Act was not written by Belinda Wilson. It was not written by the Bahamas Union of Teachers. It was passed in the Parliament of the Bahamas. And so the law is for all of us.
In the face of mounting opposition, government says it is still moving full steam to introducing the value-added tax, which it estimates can generate $200 million in revenue annually. That's crucial to cutting down government's excessive deficit and avoiding a possible financial cliff. But just 5 months shy before implementation, and a nonpartisan citizen advocacy group says information is still lacking.
Let's look at the legislation. It's not even completed as yet, as far as we know. It's not been released to the public. So by no means is there sufficient information out in the public right now.
And that's just one of the reasons why advocacy group Citizens for a Better Bahamas is hoping to drum up support to petition government against the proposed implementation of value-added tax and explore what it's calling responsible alternatives. Since launching last year, the group's co-facilitator, Tamara Van Brugel, says the movement has garnered a substantial following on social media.
That has taken off wonderfully. Our social media program, we feel we have, in a very short period of time, been very successful with. The combination of the petition on our website and our Facebook page, I think we're up to now about 4,000 or 5,000 followers who understand this idea, they're liking this idea, and they're moving forward with us.
The group claims the introduction of that would create an economic burden on the middle and lower classes through regressive taxation. And even though the country is in the midst of serious VAT conversations, Van Brugel believes citizens aren't getting sufficient information to fully understand how that will impact them.
There's one caveat, though. The persons who need to make that decision represent each and every Bahamian, and the consultation with the Bahamians that they represent, we don't feel has been properly completed, and we're trying to facilitate people getting access to their members of parliament, providing them with the numbers to contact them. Get on the phone, ask them to explain it, ask them what their benefits are, what the features are of that. There are a lot of people, and we cannot deny it, a lot of Bahamians who are still at a loss for how this VAT plan will actually provide for the betterment of the Bahamas.
But State Minister for Finance Michael Halkida says government has been working tirelessly to ensure that all of the potential impacts of this tax are considered and that the net positive impact by far outweighs any negative impacts.
We have the benefit of programs in terms of things that can test the impact of it. We are listening continuously to feedback.
He affirmed this week that government is on target for its July 1st implementation deadline and that the legislation should be tabled very soon.
We expect
that in a matter of weeks we'll be able to compile all of the sort of feedback that we've been getting, make any adjustments that we think need to be made, and so you'll see it very, very, very soon, because we have to have it in place, in sufficient time before the implementation date.
Parliamentarians turned their attention from policy making to pray today as they attended their annual church service. Carla Palmer was there and tells us that the lawmakers were challenged to put country above self.
In a sermon entitled National Leadership, Dr. Miles Munroe pricked the moral and social conscience of parliamentarians, calling on them to lead by example, to display more of the characteristics of honesty, integrity, fairness, transparency, security, political purity, and maturity. Here's the kind of leadership he says that will destroy us as a country.
We will be destroyed by leaders who elevate politics without principles, pleasure without conscience, wealth without work, knowledge without character, business without morality, science without humanity, and worship without sacrifice.
Dr. Munroe challenged parliamentarians to climb the ladder of progress, elevating themselves for the benefit of all.
We don't need more politicians in leadership. We got a lot of them. We need more leadership in politicians. Politicians focus on programs and promises, but leaders focus on purpose and passion. Politicians, they focus on projects and compromise, but leaders focus on vision and values.
From a biblical perspective, Dr. Munroe offered parliamentarians practical applications for the role of governance and leadership.
Find a purpose more important than power. Find a national vision that is bigger than your political party. Find convictions more important than compromise. Find values that are more important than vacillation. Find passion more important than popularity. Find a faith that is more important than the facts. Find a God who is more important than your pride.
As legislators, Dr. Munroe called on parliamentarians to not make a mockery of the law, to apply punishment wherever necessary, always delivering justice.
Never support a bill or create a law that will violate God's law. Never support or create a bill that will produce a culture that will destroy your children's children. Never make laws that protect the evil ones.
I'm Carla Palmer for ZNS Network News.
From the crime beat tonight, police are investigating the death of a male whose body was discovered in a burning vehicle at the rear of the Dundas Center for the Performing Arts. The body was found just after 3 this afternoon. Assistant Commissioner of Police Anthony Ferguson says officers were called to the scene shortly after residents heard gunshots being fired. Police stopped short of classifying the discovery as a homicide. However, Ferguson said 4 men were seen running from the scene. He appealed to anyone with information regarding this incident to contact police.
The responding officers, upon arrival, met a Honda Civic ablaze on fire. Officers made contact with the fire branch department, who arrived on the scene, met the vehicle fully engulfed in flames. Upon the extinguish of the vehicle, officers discovered the badly burnt body of what we believe to be a male remains in the passenger seat.
From the courts, 21-year-old Dario Musgrove was arraigned today in connection with 2 firearm-related charges. Musgrove is accused of having an unlicensed revolver and several rounds of ammunition. He pled not guilty to the charge and bail was denied. The case was adjourned to March 4th. Testimony continued today in the Ebenezer Mission Baptist Church trial. During proceedings, the court heard from Reverend Lorenzo Moss, who said he chaired a meeting in March 2012 calling for the late Bishop Elkin Simonet to be removed as chairman of the board. He told jurors the bishop was suffering from dementia and the onset of Parkinson's disease and was therefore unfit to effectively manage the church. However, under cross-examination, Moss admitted that he held the meeting to remove the bishop days after the bishop reinstated his son Michael as co-pastor and after the bishop dissolved the temporary board of the directors on which he sat as chairman. Justice Milton Evans is presiding over the case.
In our first look at weather, we have a slow-moving frontal system over the extreme northwest Bahamas. It's firing up some showers and a couple of thunderstorms in the vicinity of Grand Bahama, and that will continue sinking towards the south during the course of the night. But right now, outside of our studios, we have partly cloudy skies. Your temperature 79 degrees, relative humidity 84%. Winds are out of the south-southeast at 7 knots. Barometric pressure 1,016.0 millibars. That's 30.00 inches, and it is rising. But stay tuned. Travel weather is still to come.
And coming up, nurses look to the future.
And then in sports, a Bahamian morning of a different kind for Alonzo heats up with his love for the country. Find out more in ZNS Total Sports. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Shell Helix Ultra. Performance you can see.